Since the hybrid war is near its end, I decided that even if Furiosa does not show up in Goji Center's contest, I'll give her a nice goodbye, well, at least in this channel, by talking about the lore I made for her. Ever since I made her, I grew attached to it, not gonna lie. So I've decided to write a whole lore about it, and here is it. So instead of being a hybrid, Furiosa and the Portenvenators are just animals who evolved on a planet that was terraformed by a company and was made hospitable for living organisms, which ended up resembling some animals on Earth, but not all of them. Here are a few of them, just so you can get the picture. Starting off with a relatively rare one, Brachidoris vascus, or what the name means, short-faced spear grazer. They are grazeland triceratopsids who normally don't live in the same ecosystem as the Portenvenator. However, on rare occasions, they do make their way within the more arid environments of the planet. What differentiates them from the Triceratops is their lack of nasal horn and their relatively short face. That's what gives them their name. Another difference from the Triceratops is their herding behavior. Instead of being herds or being solitary like the real Triceratops would probably be, the Brachidoris lives in harems, one male and multiple females, generally 5 to 6 females, and sometimes if the two males happen to be related, like brothers or cousins, they both would lead the harem. In terms of overall size, they don't really differentiate themselves from their real-world counterparts. They just so happen to be slightly longer, with only counting the horns. However, they would at max be within the same weight class, with some individuals perhaps bypassing that. Next up is Cosmospinus tohunensis. These are the piscivorous theropods of the planet who prefer to fulfill the niche of, well, fish eaters. They barely have any direct interactions with other theropods on the planet due to not only how rare they are, but the fact that most predators just aren't willing to attack them due to the huge sail making them appear bigger than they actually are. That being said, they are not pushovers, and they could definitely put up a fight against most of them, but there's one problem with all of that ability to fight back that actually turns out to be quite a problem for them. Next up is the local hadrosaur of the planet, Machycephalosaurus hipposus, or how it translates literally, battle-crested warrior horse. Unlike real-world hadrosaurids, the Machycephalosaurus possesses more defensive-oriented structures in order for better defend itself from predators. Not only are their hooves more reinforced in order to kick similar to horses with their front legs, which is something horses can do, but also they possess a crest that is hardened and as thick as a Pachycephalosaurus skull, and also a good chunk of their tail is reinforced with cartilage and covered with pseudo spikes that are more there for blunt force that they can use in order to defend themselves against the largest predator of the planet. On average, they would only be on the same size range, perhaps even maybe larger than even the Shantungosaurus. No, they did not evolve such structures against the local Abelisaurid, Abeliprognathus potens, nor the basal Carcharodontosaurid, Allotherium vulcanus, but rather against the largest predator on the planet, the Portenvenator. In the story, they got their name due to the fact that not only are they one of the largest predators in the planet, they are the largest in the planet. No other predator around the planet has ever even challenged them in terms of overall size or even mass. However, the largest predator on the planet is at its most vulnerable when it's born. Barely even a few kilograms worth of mass, these creatures are basically defenseless against most predators of the planet. And their only ways of defending themselves is to stick to the parents. And while Portenvenators can lay up to 20 to 25 eggs only 4 to maybe 5 individuals ever make to adulthood. The hatchlings who usually make to adulthood are the ones who usually stay close to their parents at all times and always learn to pick up their tricks, learning what prey to avoid and what prey to always target, when to strike, where to strike, and what are the best times to hunt. Those are the differences between the hatchlings that will make up to adulthood and the hatchlings who will become the food for another predator, including other Portenvenators. Furiosa herself grew up larger than her siblings even at a young age. At the age of 2, where the average baby, even either male or female, would be at least 200 to maybe 150 kilograms, she already broke the scales by growing to 340 kilograms. Males usually end up leaving their families at an older age, between 10 to 14 years. That's where they would leave their families to go off live by themselves, and it's usually a decision they made for themselves without any actual reinforcement from their own parents. From that point on, they basically live off on their own, hunting and surviving by themselves, only hunting animals that they can overpower or animals that they can catch off guard. The life of a female is rather peaceful, well, relatively speaking. One reason why the females are larger than the males is due to the fact that larger females were able to scare off predators without needing confrontation, and so favoring larger females to be selected. Females, whenever they find each other and decide to have a face-off, it's usually not brutal and rarely escalates to a physical conflict. It usually escalates to one female having to size up with each other, and if they can show up their own scars, demonstrating they possess more experience than they might appear to. But they rarely get violent. Unfortunately, this is not true for the males, as the males have a more aggressive lifestyle. Due to the fact that they are smaller than the females, they make up for the lack of size in terms of overall aggression. They are always picking fights with either each other or similarly sized dinosaurs on the planet, such as the Machicefalosaurus, which ends up creating an interesting biological co-interaction between the two. Younger males of both species, if they ever find each other, it will usually result in the death of one or the other. If the males happen to be both old and seasoned, it actually goes the opposite. It's likely that the male of either species will prefer to try to scare off the other, which usually happens, and such older males are actually more likely to live through an encounter. However, the only creature on the planet they refuse to attack is a female Portenvenator. While they are usually aggressive against everything, the females just simply make them somewhat docile. This is because females usually prefer males who are more tame, more collected, and only use their aggression when necessary. The bullies and more aggressive males are usually left in the dust as they perceive these bursts of aggression as a way to make up for lack of experience. And Furiosa herself ended up getting exactly that. Gaius, a male just as old as her, was able to win Furiosa's heart, despite the fact that she's even larger than the average females he ever saw before. While a good portion of their life is spent well alone, once they mate for life and become a pack. Usually the hunting strategy from now on is that the female usually waits nearby while the male goes up and distracts the prey item from the front. Once the prey shows itself vulnerable, the female will charge in and basically use her weight to subjugate the prey and make it unable to fight back, while the male claws, bites, and tears into the prey. That being said, while they become more, let's say, friendly to each other, they don't become more friendly to individual Portenvenators. If two families happen to clash, the two males will go off and face each other. The winner of this clash usually is the one who maintains their territory or gains a new territory. However, One relatively rare event in the life of a Portenvenator is what can be called a congregation of mass feeding. When sauropods are migrating, and one of them happen to be either sick or old, a group of Portenvenators will show up, different families from different parts of from different territories. And while usually families of Portenvenators don't like to the company of each other, this is a moment where the intelligence of the Portenvenator comes into play. They are smart enough to cooperate, more or less, with each other to bring down the larger sauropod, which they realize that while they are powerful, a good amount of them could definitely bring one down. It's usually an event that takes hours. Sometimes the sauropod doesn't even die there, but dies next day or dies days later. And usually the families are, well, let's say, thankful enough to sometimes split the spoils of war, but other times the whoever males is more fit for combat and can still fight after hours of fighting a sauropod is usually the one who keeps the food for their family. During this event, babies are far away and hidden within certain places to make sure that no other family tries to screw their over. Once the event is finished, the families usually go apart. They basically forget that the event even happened, as while they can hold memories for a very long time, they usually don't see other Portentinators' families as actual allies and more potential allies within certain circumstances, but most of the times they are seen as enemies. Once the Portentinators finish off the carcass, which includes the very bones, the families usually go their own way. While they are social with other Portentinators, those bonds are usually exclusive to their families. Rarely will other families cooperate with each other, and in the rare occasion they do, there's probably a high chance that it will turn out into a fight at the end. However, even the largest of the predators meets their downfall. While on average they can live up to 70 to 80 years, their life expectancy is usually 30, with at max 40. Due to the fact that they live in such a dangerous planet, they are also victims of their own ecology. Males have a higher rate and are more likely to die at a younger age, as if they don't meet their adult sizes or are extremely unlucky and get ganged by other smaller predators. This is where their life can end. However, adults are not safe from this fate either. Sometimes a hunt can go wrong. Sometimes they can get either injured enough to the point they can hunt, or they just can get killed on the spot. Sometimes they can die due to the fact that they were unable to find a mate and end up trying to swallow more than they could chew. And unfortunately, this was the fate of Gaius, Furiosa's partner. While he was experienced enough, every every bow meets their challenge. One day he ends up trying to take down a Brachidoris without noticing that there was a second male, and while he was able to subdue the first male, the second one ended up going for the kill, and unfortunately for Gaius, he met his end. While Furiosa and her daughters were able to chase off the males, Gaius was unfortunately unlucky, and while they did her best to try to save their father, Gaius died hours later, and mourning the death of her husband, Furiosa simply let him. Her daughters did so as well. However, Gaius' legacy lives on. His offspring shall forever carry his legacy and honor him in death.